Hi, everybody, and welcome to week 11. I hope that you all are home and staying safe and healthy and all of those good things. I really hope that you all are doing well. I'm coming to you this week straight from my kitchen. Yeah, I miss seeing your faces, but I guess this is the next best thing. So let's get to it. This week, our theme is fundraising events. In this lecture, I'm going to go over some announcements and the week 11 checklist. I'm going to talk about the event plan assignment, and I'm also going to give you all some information about fundraising events. So I do have a few announcements before we get started. I just wanted to remind everyone that your grant narrative assignment is due April 21st. If you have submitted your grant early on April 15th, I'll be getting that feedback to you as soon as possible. So just wanted to remind you all of that deadline. Again, want to make sure that you are all moving forward on the board interview and assessment assignment, and that one is due May 5th. I really encourage you all to not put this one off until the last minute because it's going to take a little bit of time to get that interview scheduled, to actually do the interview, to compile your notes, and to get everything together. So please reach out to me if you're having trouble getting an interview with a board member, and I can help you with that. Wanted to remind you all that the event plan assignment is also due April 21st. So that is the assignment that we're going to talk about this week. And then one more announcement, the Program Development Agency Assessment Assignment, the due date has been changed. So we're going to move this into week 12. So I'm going to introduce this in week 12. I'm going to give you all the resources you need to do this in week 12. And then the due date for this assignment is going to be May 5th. So please, as always, email me or text me if you have any questions about these assignments or if you have questions or concerns about the due dates. So let's talk about the event plan assignment. It's due on April 21st. The description is posted in the week 11 checklist. So for this assignment, you'll want to take a look at the description so you know what to do and how you will be graded. And then you'll want to use the template. So for the assignment, you just download the template and go through and fill it out. And what I'm going to be looking for in this assignment is I want you to be both creative and realistic. So the purpose of this assignment is for you to think about if you were to plan an event, how would you do it? What kinds of things would be in your plan? So it should be unique and make sense for whatever organization you're using as a case example, but it also needs to be realistic. And for this, of course, you can use your field placement as a case example, or you can use any nonprofit of your choice. So let's talk about fundraising events. I love fundraising events. I think they are so fun, both to attend and to plan. The thing about fundraising events is that there are so many different ways to do them. They can be big, they can be small, they can be super formal, they can be super informal. There's just so many different creative options. These pictures are of two fundraising events that I've been to. So the one on the left, it was a fundraising event for Minnesota Public Radio. As you can see, they had a photo booth with a fun background and props. And so that's a picture of me and my friend at that event. And then the picture on the right is me at the NAMI Walk in 2018. And so those are two very, very different types of events just to kind of illustrate the diversity. So like I said, fundraising events can really be creative. There's a lot of different options. So these are some examples. One thing I want to point out here is that you really want to make sure that whatever you're doing suits the organization that you're doing. So for example, if you were doing a fundraiser for Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge, which is an agency that works with people who are recovering from substance use disorder, you are probably not going to do a bar crawl as a fundraiser. Similarly, like if you are a nonprofit that works with bicycles and alternative transportation, you're probably not going to do a car wash. So your event really needs to match your audience. So I want to get started with talking about some pros and cons of fundraising events because a lot of people struggle with thinking about whether or not their organization should be doing an event. The recent circumstances with COVID-19 obviously throw a huge wrench into any event planning. But in general, outside of the current crisis, there are some general pros and cons of fundraising events. So the pros obviously are fundraising events raise money, and that's a good thing, right? But in addition to raising money, they also raise awareness. So a good example of this, I think, is the Animal Humane Society. They have done a really nice job with having their billboards for their events. They had a gala and they have a walk. And I've seen their billboards all across the metro. They've also got ads on the radio. So they're really coming to top of mind for people, even if they're not attending the event. And then for the people who actually go to the event, you get more embedded in the organization. With that, a great thing about fundraising events is they engage your donors and they engage the public. So people are actually doing something. They're interacting with staff. You get FaceTime with them. They're having fun. It's a positive experience. So it's a really, really great engagement tool, rather than just, sending an appeal to your donors and having them send you money. And also, fundraising events can be really fun in a way that maybe just sending an email or a paper piece of mail is not quite as fun and exciting. Obviously, there are some significant drawbacks to doing fundraising events. So fundraising events raise money, but they also cost money. Doing an event costs a lot more money than just sending an appeal. So there is significant investment financially to do a fundraising event. And of course, there's no guarantee that you will actually make money. That sometimes events take losses because it costs more to do the event than what you get in return. In addition to money, fundraising events take staff time and energy. And so obviously not every organization is able to have a dedicated staff person to plan their events. Some do, but many small organizations just don't. So it's an extra burden on the staff and their time and energy. And then the last drawback of fundraising events is that people can get tired of going to events, especially if the fundraising events aren't creative or innovative. It just seems kind of repetitive. It can be difficult to get good turnout, that people just get tired of that. So this will be one that will be interesting to see moving forward, what happens if there's still the same level of event fatigue among the general public, or if once we return to a more normal way of life where we aren't quarantined in our homes, if people are really excited to get out and go to events. So I'm not sure what will happen with that one, but in the past, event fatigue has been a significant concern. That how many events can you get your donors to come to? When are they going to get sick of it? So there are a lot of things that you want to keep in mind when you are planning an event. And my list here pretty closely follows the template for your assignment. So I'm going to go through all of these bullet points, which loosely correspond to the template. And for this purpose of explaining these points, I'm going to use an example of NAMI Walks. So NAMI Walks is NAMI Minnesota's biggest event of the year. It's a walk that they hold in September. It's one of their major fundraisers of the year, and it's also one of their biggest awareness building events for the year. So I'm going to be referencing that as a case example as we go through these. So the first thing you want to have when you're starting your event planning is some clear goals. So it's really good to have a dollar amount that you're shooting for and being specific. So obviously your goal is to raise money, but how much money? How will you know when it's been a success? So at NAMI Minnesota, there is a dollar amount in their annual budget that is expected to be raised by the walk. You also want to define what your cause or program is. So some fundraising events might be for a particular cause. So your agency might be very big, but you might be having an event where you're specifically raising money for youth programs or for adult programs or whatever. For NAMI Walks, the cause is mental health awareness. So the money benefits NAMI's general operating fund. You also want to think about if you have any attendance goals. And so this might be based on the size of your venue. So you want to think about how many people you expect to attend your event or that you want to attend your event, because that's going to influence how much money you can bring in. It's going to influence a lot of your planning. And then some fundraising events have other secondary goals. So for NAMI Walks, in addition to primarily the goal is to raise money, a secondary goal is to engage the public. So we want to be in the news. We want to be at top of mind for people. We want to engage our people from greater Minnesota. So it's really about engagement and awareness in addition to fundraising. And other fundraising events might have other types of secondary goals. So when you're planning an event, you'll need to set your budget. So you'll want to think about what are going to be the real expenses. So is there going to be a fee for your venue? Do you need technology? So for example, for NAMI Walks, they had a text to give option. And so that's great because it's a tool to raise money. It's another opportunity for people to donate, but there's also a cost associated with using that kind of software. We also do online donations for NAMI Walks, and there's another cost to use that software so that people can donate online. There's almost always printing fees associated with the events. So whether that is like print marketing, that you're going to send invitations to people, maybe you're printing signage, maybe you have banners or posters. Another thing that I wanted to point out is credit card fees. So when you are accepting donations with a credit card, there's typically a processing fee for that. So that's something to be mindful of. And then, of course, decorations, activity supplies, food, music. And then a lot of events need, big events especially, have contract expenses. So if you're having an auction, you might need to hire someone to run your auction. Or for with NAMI Walks, that event takes place in Minnehaha Park in Minneapolis, and there's a cost to hire police officers because the City of Minneapolis Parks Department requires that if you're having an event in their park space and you're renting out the space, that you have to have a police officer. So we have to budget in the money to pay the police officer who will be staffing the event. So the next thing you're going to want to think about is the date, time, and venue. So kind of the logistics of when and where. So you'll want to think about when is the best time for your event. So for NAMI Walks, that is always held the third Saturday in September. So that tends to be a really good time because the weather is still really nice, but it's not super hot. So people are happy to be outside. And also, if it's in September, it's typically not conflicting with people's busy schedule in the summertime. And it's far enough after school has started that it's not conflicting with that kind of stuff. And then it's always the same date every year, third Saturday in September every year. So people kind of get in a routine with it. There's a lot of people who come year after year and they just always know when it's going to be. As far as where it should be, that really depends on who your audience is and how many people you expect to attend. So you want to have a venue that is going to accommodate the number of people that you're hoping for. So again, with NAMI Walks, we do it in Minnehaha Park. It's a huge event, so we really do need that big, large space. And the nice thing about that space is it has access to restrooms. It has a covered area for us to do registration. It has big open space. It has a band shell for us to have a DJ. And it's right along the river road. So there's an easily accessible route to actually do the walk. You don't want to have a venue that is too big, but you also don't want to have a venue that is too small. And you want it to be in a location that is easily accessible to people. The one thing that is really tricky with doing an event at Minnehaha Park for NAMI walks is parking. So that's always not a fun thing to think about, but is really important that if you are bringing in a huge number of people, where are they going to park, or are they going to be comfortable using public transit? For NAMI walks, because we have 3,000 people coming into the park and there's extremely limited parking space there, we have set up a shuttle where we hire a bus company to loop between a parking lot that's about 2 miles away from the park and the park, so that we've kind of, that's our workaround for solving that issue. So you want to think about who is going to be attending your event. So who is your intended audience? Who would be interested in your cause? The type of people that you want to reach is going to influence a lot of aspects of planning for your event. So for example, for NAMI walks, the target audience is really the general public. So we're trying to reach anyone who might be interested or have an affinity with the mental health world. So because NAMI's real focus is on people with lived experience of a mental illness, a lot of the people who end up attending the NAMI walk are people who either live with a mental illness, who are mental health treatment providers, or who are family members of a loved one living with a mental illness. So those are kind of the people that they're trying to reach. And then, of course, you want to make sure that everything that you're planning suits that audience. You'll also need to think about your activities and theme for your event. So some events have more specific themes than others. NAMI walks usually has a pretty loose theme. It changes every year, but really the theme is outside, walking, hopefulness. And you want to have activities that people can do at the event. So those are going to be different depending on what type of event you're having. So obviously the big activity at the walk is the actual walk itself. But we also have lots of other types of activities that people can do either before or after they walk. So there are food trucks, there's an art booth. This picture is of the Tree of Hope, which is an activity that attendees can do at the walk if they don't want to actually do the walk. So we have these paper leaves, and people can write things that they're hopeful for and pin it to the tree. And you also want to think about things like food or music or dancing. Those are kind of standard things for a lot of fundraising events. So for NAMI walks, we usually have food trucks that people can purchase food, and then NAMI is usually able to get some food donated for the walk. So there's usually some snacks or water or Gatorade at the end for people. And then NAMI also typically either gets a band or a DJ to play before and after the walk. So it just kind of creates a fun atmosphere in the park during the event. So one thing that can really help meet revenue goals for a fundraising event is sponsors. So sponsors can bring in a lot of money for your organization. The NAMI Walk does have quite a lot of sponsors, and they have sponsors at different price points. So when recruiting sponsors for the NAMI Walk, you again want to think about who would be a likely sponsor. So for the NAMI Walk, a lot of the sponsors are healthcare organizations. You can see here's a picture of Allina Health, which was a sponsor for the NAMI Walk, but Health Partners was also a sponsor. Blue Cross Blue Shield sponsored. UCare is usually a sponsor. So we do some specific outreach to those groups because they are likely sponsors. how much you charge sponsors can really help you bring in revenue. So for the NAMI Walk, there's different price points, and then there's different benefits for each price point. So the very large sponsors get a lot of recognition. They get a booth in the park. They get a special shout out during the program. And then the lowest level of sponsorship for the NAMI Walk is at the $250 level. And for that level, the sponsor gets like a little yard sign that's placed along the walk route. So you get still some recognition and a benefit, but not nearly as much as someone like Alina, who paid a lot more money to be a sponsor of the event. So you also want to think about what donation methods you're going to use at your event. So what I mean by that is, how are people going to give you money? So you have this event, but there has to be some mechanism for them to give it to you. So some fundraising events generate revenue through ticket sales. That is not the case for NAMI Walks. It's free to register for NAMI Walks, but NAMI does have a gala where there is a cost to attend. Text to donate is a really great option. People can do it on the spot. So you can see here, there's a picture of the signs that we used at the last NAMI Walk for people to text to get a link to donate on the spot from their phone. Some fundraising events just have envelopes for people to put cash or a check in. Some do the pass the hat method, where they give a little speech, they make an ask, they pass a box or something around the room for people to drop their donation in. And some events have other types of web-based or mobile ways to donate. So you want to think about what makes sense for your audience and like what you can manage. So at the walk, there's a web-based option. There is text to donate. There's no ticket sales, but people do have the option to fill out an envelope in the park if they feel inspired to give, and they can give a check or cash on site at their registration booth at the park. So there's several different ways for people to give money. So all events need people power. So you'll need to think about how many staff and volunteers you'll need for the event. So here you can see a couple of pictures of staff and volunteers at the last NAMI Walk. So on the left, there's some staff and volunteers who are handing out food and water at the end of the walk. And on the right, there's a staff member from NAMI sitting at the registration table. So an event like the NAMI Walk really requires a significant level of staff and volunteer support because it's a huge event. There's tons of setup, there's heavy lifting, there's accounting, there's really a huge range of skills that are needed in order to haul picnic tables and organize everything and count money and hand out t-shirts and mark the route and pass out water and answer questions and register people and all of those different kinds of things. Engaging volunteers in an event can be a great way to build a donor base. Sometimes it's easier for people to attend an event if they have a role to play rather than if they're just coming and they might not really know a lot of people. It might feel kind of awkward. So it's a nice way to get people involved. It's also a nice way to get people involved who might not be able to donate financially, but they could contribute some of their time. So other types of fundraising events will obviously have different staff and volunteer needs. Some are much higher maintenance than others, depending on what type of event you're doing. So I also want to talk about accessibility for your event. So you want to make sure that your event is fully accessible so that you can make sure that everyone feels welcome and comfortable and able to attend. So a couple things that happen at the NAMI Walk in order to make it more accessible. As you can see, there are lots of benches and places to sit in the park. And there's like a little program from the stage before the walk actually starts. And actually, maybe I would guess maybe half of the people who attend the NAMI walk don't actually do the walk. A lot of them just hang out in the park, and that's totally fine. They still contribute to the event. Some of them still contribute money. They still contribute to raising awareness just by being in the park, even if a lot of people either can't or don't want to actually walk. So there's lots of nice places for them to sit and hang out there if they don't want to actually walk. Another thing we did to make people feel a little bit more comfortable is we added a dog zone. So we have a lot of families come to this event, and it's outside, it's in September. Lots of people want to bring their dogs for the walk. So we made a special dog zone that has some like bandanas and water bowls for dogs so that the people can feel like they're able to bring their whole family, including their pet, and then there's some accommodations there. So there's a really wide range of things that you need to think about when you're thinking about accessibility. But it's an important exercise to think about your event and how can you make it the most accessible as possible and the most comfortable as possible so that all of your attendees can feel welcome and participate. So then one of the last things you're going to think about is the follow-up after the event. So you did all this planning, you put all this energy into it, you have the event, it's awesome, and then what? One of the great things about fundraising events is it can really generate momentum that typically after an event, people can be really excited about your organization. They want to get more involved. They just gave you money. They made a connection. You need to do some kind of follow up to capitalize on that momentum. So minimally, you're going to need to thank the attendees in whatever way makes the most sense. And then you want to think about how you can turn your attendees into long-term supporters. So with the NAMI walk, we capture everybody's information who's registered, and then we email them throughout the year, and we email them a variety of content. It's not always making an ask. Sometimes it's information, things they would be interested in, other opportunities. So we always queue up a list of volunteer opportunities like, hey, you came to our walk. Didn't you have a great time? Hey, now do you want to volunteer for NAMI? So you want to make sure you have some way to continue that relationship in whatever way, again, is tailored to the unique situation of your agency. So obviously a lot is going to be changing given the current situation with COVID-19. I've seen a lot of flurry of activity with people who kind of work in this event planning world to figure it out. I think that the bottom line here is that I don't think anyone really has it figured out. I see a lot of events either being canceled or moving online. So it's a really tricky time to be doing event planning right now. For example, at my current agency at the Minnesota Social Service Association, we do conferences. And so our next conference is going to be in March of 2021. We typically have about 3,400 people at that conference in Minneapolis, so it's very large. And even though that's about a year away, we're already starting to think about how are we going to do this? Are we going to plan for an in-person? Are we going to plan for a virtual event? Are we going to plan both options and then see what happens? So the bottom line is nobody really knows right now. We also don't know, like I said, if this means that once things return more to normal, if people are going to be really excited to go to events, or if this is going to put kind of a chill on events where people are nervous about going to big events and might prefer to stay home or to make a donation in a different way rather than going to an event. And then, of course, we could potentially be heading into an economic recession, and that could have other implications for development overall, not just for fundraising events. So a lot of uncertainty this time in the development world in general, but especially for folks who are planning events. So that's all I've got for you. I just hope that you all stay safe and stay healthy, and hope that you have all the information you need in order to do your event plan. And as always, email or text me if you have any questions. Bye.